After moving in together, my husband's parents demanded, "You must convert to our religion or we won't accept this marriage." My husband shrugged. "It's a small sacrifice." I smiled and said, "Then you'll have no problem with the sacrifice I made too." Their jaws dropped as I revealed what I had secretly arranged. I, 32 female, met Daniel, 34 male, 5 years ago while working in New York. He was charming, kind, and we had the same sense of humor. He mentioned his family was religious, but he never acted like it was a big deal. I grew up in California in a pretty secular home. My parents had different religious backgrounds, but never pushed anything on me. I never thought about it much. Daniel and I dated for 3 years before getting married. Small wedding, no religious elements. His family wasn't thrilled, but they showed up, so I figured everything was fine. I was so wrong. A year into our marriage, Daniel got a job offer in Texas, near his parents. I wasn't thrilled about leaving my job and life in New York, but I wanted to be supportive. He swore it would be great for us. I gave up my career, I was working in marketing, packed up everything, and moved with him. The second we got to Texas, his parents started with their comments. "When are you going to join us for church? You know, a real marriage needs God. You'll have to convert one day, of course." At first, I laughed it off. I should have known better. About 6 months after moving, Daniel's parents invited us over for dinner. I expected the usual annoying passive-aggressive comments. What I didn't expect was a full-blown intervention. We sat down at the table. His mom, Deborah, had that look, the one she always gave when she was about to say something important. Then his dad, Mark, cleared his throat. "We've talked about this long enough," he said, looking straight at me. "You must convert. If you don't, we won't accept this marriage." I stared at him. "Excuse me?" Daniel just shrugged. "It's a small sacrifice, babe," he said. "It would mean a lot to them." I felt my stomach drop. I looked at him, waiting for him to realize what he had just said. Waiting for him to take it back. He didn't. I smiled. Not because I was happy, because at that moment, everything clicked. This had never been about what I wanted. And that was fine. Because while they were busy plotting how to change me, I had been making some plans of my own. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder. I slid it across the table toward Mark and Deborah. They hesitated before opening it. Inside was a collection of documents. The first was a real estate contract, showing that I had secretly put our house on the market. The second was a bank statement, proving that I had been moving all my money into an account in my name only for the past 3 months. The third was a signed job offer for a position back in New York. My old boss had jumped at the chance to hire me again. And then came the real bombshell. A detailed, multi-page report. On them. While they had been busy scheming to fix me, I had been researching them. Mark's company? Not exactly clean. Turns out, he had been fudging numbers in his business's financial reports. That's the kind of thing that, if reported, could lead to a very long conversation with the IRS. Deborah's charity? More like a money laundering front. Some deep digging uncovered that most of the donations went nowhere. I had proof. Emails. Bank records. Even witness statements. I had spent months gathering everything. Deborah's hand shook as she turned the pages. Mark turned pale. Daniel, finally catching on, whispered, What is this?" I leaned back, keeping my smile. "You said it's a small sacrifice for me to change my entire life for your family." I gestured at the documents. "Well, I made a sacrifice too." Silence. Then Mark exploded. I raised my hand. "Careful," I said. "You're going to want to hear my conditions first." I gave them 2 options. 1, they drop the conversion talk forever. Never mention it again. Never push it. Never bring it up. Or 2, I go public with everything in that folder. Deborah gasped. Mark clenched his jaw so hard I thought he'd break his teeth. I turned to Daniel. "That includes you. Either you stand with me, or you stay with them. But you don't get to tell me how to live my life." Silence. Mark slid the folder back across the table. "We'll drop it," he muttered. I smiled. Good choice. Then I stood up and walked out. I drove home, half expecting Daniel to follow me. He didn't. Not that night. When he finally showed up the next morning, he walked in like nothing had happened. "Let's talk," he said. I sat down, arms crossed. "Go ahead." He sighed. "Look, I get that you're upset, but that was extreme. You don't have to go after them like that." I stared at him. "Extreme? You blindsided them. You threatened them." I laughed. "Oh, I'm the bad guy now? Your parents basically told me to change my entire identity, and I'm the one who went too far." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "You just should have talked to me first. We could have found a better way." "There was no better way, Daniel," I snapped. "They don't negotiate. They manipulate. And you? You let them." He didn't deny it. Instead, he looked at me with something almost like pity. That's when I knew. I took a slow breath. Are you going to be on my side or theirs? Silence. A long, painful silence. Then, instead of answering, he said, "You shouldn't have done this." I felt a sharp stab in my chest, but I didn't let it show. Right, I said, standing up. Got it. I didn't see him much over the next few days. He said he was working late. I knew better. Then, exactly 1 week after that dinner, I got a call. From my real estate agent. "Hey, just checking in. You never mentioned your husband was considering canceling the sale." I nearly dropped my phone. What? He called me this morning. Said you two were rethinking things. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Ignore him. The sale stands. My agent hesitated. Look, I don't want to get between you two, but he sounded serious. He said you're having marital issues and that he wants to protect your shared assets. I thanked him and hung up. My hands were shaking. Daniel wasn't just upset. He was trying to trap me. I needed to move fast. That night, I waited for Daniel to come home. When he finally walked in, I was sitting at the kitchen table. My phone was on the table, recording. "Hey," he said, looking exhausted. I didn't say anything. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Can we not do this?" I held up my phone. "Tell me why you called our real estate agent." His eyes widened for just a second before he covered it up. You were trying to block the sale." "Why?" He scoffed. "It's our house, isn't it?" "I have a right to, not anymore," I cut in. "I transferred everything into my name 2 weeks ago." His face dropped. "You what?" I smiled. "Oops. Forgot to mention that." I watched the panic settle in his eyes. "You don't have a claim to this house anymore, Daniel. The sale is going through." For the first time, I saw something ugly in him. Something I had ignored for years. Something I couldn't ignore anymore. "This is insane," he muttered. "You're blowing up our whole marriage over a small issue." "Small?" I stood up. "This isn't just about religion, Daniel. It's about control. Your parents want to control me, and now you're trying to, too. That's not fair." "No." I grabbed my phone. "Then tell me why your mother texted you today." I turned the screen toward him. His face went white. Deborah had texted Daniel a detailed list of lawyers who specialized in contesting property sales and freezing bank accounts. "I don't even know if this would work," she wrote. "But we need to stop her before it's too late." Too late for what, exactly? Daniel's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Save it," I snapped. "You knew. You were in on this. You just didn't think I'd find out." His jaw clenched. "They're just trying to protect me." "Us." I laughed. "No, Daniel. They're trying to control me. And instead of standing up for your wife, you let them." His silence was my answer. I felt something inside me break. I had been so stupid. I thought I had married a good man. Someone who had my back. But the truth? Daniel had never been on my side. He was on theirs. I needed to get out. And I needed to ruin them first. The next morning, I called my lawyer. "Freeze the sale," I said. My lawyer hesitated. "I thought you wanted to move fast?" "I do," I said. "But if Daniel's trying to block it, I want to see how far he's willing to go. Because here's the thing, I knew his parents wouldn't stop. But I needed them to make the first real move." And sure enough, they did. 2 days later, I got an email alert. A large transfer had been attempted from our joint account. I checked. $50,000. Gone. I immediately called the bank. "This was not authorized," I said. The banker sounded hesitant. "It was transferred to a trust under your husband's name. He has access to the account." "Ma'am." I cut her off. "I want that money back. Now." She hesitated. "We'll need both parties to agree," I laughed. "Oh, that's cute. Then let me send you something." I emailed over a copy of my new legal documents, the ones that showed I had already moved my personal funds and was in the process of legally separating my finances. The banker was silent for a long moment. Then she cleared her throat. "I'll escalate this immediately." Within 3 hours, the money was back in my account. Within 6 hours, I received a text from Daniel. "Why did you reverse the transfer?" "We need that money." "Oh, we?" I texted back. "You mean your parents need that money?" Because let's be honest, Daniel didn't need $50,000. But Mark and Deborah? Their business was struggling. They needed a way to cover their tracks. And they were hoping to do it with my money. That night, Daniel came home furious. He slammed the door. "What the hell are you doing?" I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my wine. "I don't know what you mean. You reversed the transfer. You're making things harder than they need to be." I laughed. "I'm making things harder?" He ran a hand through his hair. "My parents saw." I held up a finger. "There it is." He exhaled sharply. "They needed it for a short time. They were gonna pay it back." "Right. And I was just supposed to trust them. Their family." "No," I said. "I was supposed to be your family." Silence. And then, for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Because he finally understood I was done. But he still had one more trick up his sleeve. I should have known they'd try to trap me. The next morning, I got an email from my lawyer. Daniel had secretly filed for a financial hold on all our assets. The argument? I was mentally unstable and making irrational financial decisions. I stared at my screen, completely frozen. Then I saw it, an attached affidavit. Signed by Mark and Deborah. They were trying to prove I was unstable to seize control of my finances. I took a deep breath. And then I smiled. Because, oh, they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. I drove straight to my lawyer's office. "You're not going to believe this," I said, dropping the papers on her desk. She flipped through them, then let out a low whistle. "They're stupid," she muttered. I grinned. "Yeah, they are. Because guess what? I had recorded everything. Every phone call. Every conversation. Every threat. I had screenshots of their texts, proof that Daniel had tried to steal from me, and evidence that Mark's company was under investigation." My lawyer sat back. "This," she said, waving the papers. "This is fraud. If we take this to court, you can bury them." I leaned forward. "Let's do it." While Daniel and his parents thought they were trapping me, I was already 3 steps ahead. I filed a legal counterclaim. I froze their accounts. And I made one phone call. To the IRS. To the Bank Fraud Division. To the Charity Oversight Board. Mark and Deborah thought they could erase their dirty money trail. They thought they could use me as their scapegoat. They had no idea who they were messing with. I was prepared for a fight. But I wasn't prepared for Daniel's next move. Because the night before my lawyer was set to file everything, Daniel came home. And he dropped a bombshell. "They're cutting me off," he said, voice shaking. I blinked. "What?" "My parents. They said if I don't get you to back down, they're disowning me." I tilted my head. "And?" His hands clenched into fists. "And? I have nothing without them." I sat back. "Sounds like a you problem." Then he did something I never expected. He dropped to his knees. "Please," he whispered. "I need you to stop this." I stared at him. For the first time, I saw who he really was. A weak, spineless man who had spent his whole life under his parents' thumb. And now that they were turning on him, he was begging me for help. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Because this wasn't my problem anymore. This was war. Because while I thought I had all the power, he was about to prove me wrong. Because the next morning, I woke up to a text. From an unknown number. "If you go through with this, you'll regret it." And that's when I realized, this fight wasn't just about money anymore. That text message sent a chill through me. "If you go through with this, you'll regret it." I stared at my phone, trying to decide if I should be scared or angry. Because this wasn't just a threat. It was desperation. And desperate people make stupid mistakes. I took a slow breath and typed back, "Try me." Then I grabbed my keys. Because I knew exactly where I needed to be. I pulled into Mark and Deborah's driveway. Daniel's car was already there. Of course it was. I barely made it to the front door before it swung open. Daniel stood there, looking like he hadn't slept. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I pushed past him. "Where are they?" "They don't want to see you, I don't care." I stormed into the living room. Mark and Deborah were sitting stiffly on the couch. Deborah had her arms crossed. Mark's face was red, his hands clenched into fists. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Oh, but I should," I said, throwing my phone onto the coffee table. "Recognize that number?" Deborah's lips tightened. Mark didn't even blink. Because he already knew. I folded my arms. "So, which one of you sent it?" Silence. Then Daniel exhaled loudly. "It was me," he muttered. I laughed. I actually laughed. "You threatened me?" "It wasn't a threat," he said quickly. I wanted you to back down." My laughter died instantly. I leaned forward, my voice low. "You wanted me to be afraid." Daniel swallowed. Deborah sighed. "You're being dramatic." I whirled on her. "Dramatic? You people tried to steal my money. You tried to trap me in a fake financial hold, and now your son is sending me threats." Mark stood up. "This is your last chance," he said. "Drop the legal claim. We'll let you leave clean. No fights. No courts." I stared at him. Then I smiled. "Oh, Mark," I said softly. "You still don't get it, do you?" I reached into my bag. And I pulled out a thick manila folder. I tossed it onto the table. Mark hesitated before picking it up. Then he flipped it open. And his face turned gray. Because inside that folder? A full IRS complaint. An anonymous tip to the SEC. A whistleblower report on Deborah's charity. And at the bottom? Copies of every single fraudulent document I had found. Mark's hands started shaking. Deborah gasped. Daniel just looked lost. I smiled sweetly. "I already filed them this morning." Mark lunged toward me. I didn't even flinch. because the moment he moved, Daniel grabbed him. Dad, stop. Dio, you have any idea what you've done? Mark roared. I tilted my head. I think I just made sure you never scam anyone again. Deborah's eyes filled with tears. You vindictive little, I cut her off. No, you don't get to cry. You did this to yourself. She pressed a shaking hand to her mouth. And then I turned to Daniel. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't fighting. He was just staring at the floor. Say something, I said. His jaw tightened. Then, in a hollow voice, he whispered, they told me you'd never go through with it. I blinked. Oh. He had known. They had all convinced themselves that I was just bluffing. That I was too emotional. That I was just a hysterical woman. They had bet everything on me backing down. And they had lost. Completely. I walked out. I didn't even look back. By the time I got home, my phone was blowing up. Calls, texts, voicemails. I didn't answer a single one. Then, a few days later, the real fallout began. The IRS opened an investigation. The SEC launched an inquiry. The charity? Shut down. Mark resigned from his own company before he could be fired. Deborah tried to play the victim, but when reporters started digging, she went quiet real fast. Daniel lost everything. His parents cut him off. They blamed him for everything. I didn't even have to divorce him. He basically walked away on his own. And as for our house? Sold. For a huge profit. The money? Sitting comfortably in my bank account. A year later, I was back in New York. One day, I got a message from a mutual friend. Daniel was working at a car dealership. Mark and Deborah had moved to a smaller house after legal fees drained them. The last line of the message? I don't think they've ever recovered from what you did to them. I sat back and took a sip of my coffee. And then I smiled. Because for the first time in a long time, I was finally free.